When you think about Beijing, of course you think about the iconic places like Tiananmen Square, the Forbidden City, and the Great Wall. But it's not a question of whether you're going to see them. It's a question of how and when. It's all about the finesse. So let me show you my hidden gems of Beijing. With a population that tops 20 million and a history that stretches back more than 3,000 years, when you visit Beijing, it's really not the time to pull out the guidebook. You've got to hit the street. If you're looking to see Beijing in a very special way, and I mean a really special way, I'm not talking about a tour bus or some kind of guided tour. It's this way. It's by Sidecar. Hey, all right. And away we go. Beijing has nearly 3,000 miles of roads, and they're usually packed with cars. So riding in one of these is a great way to cut through all that traffic. It only costs about $250 for 2 people for 2 hours. You can't see Beijing any better than this. None of that. Feels pretty cool, too. Many of the old streets in Beijing are no wider than a small alley. They're called hutongs, and it's back in here that the real heart of the city is pulsing. Oh, yeah, look at the meat. Look at the meat. Wow. You got eggs, got meat, got fruit. Pretty cool. And there are plenty of hidden treasures, if you know where to look.
Wait, and this door was owned by a military, a soldier. By the size of it, you can think they were officers, quite high-ranking.
Not a bad way to get your first taste of a city as sprawling as this one. All right. As we all know, China sells a huge amount of stuff to the rest of the world. And let's be honest, a lot of it is junk. But there are exceptions, and you can sometimes find them in the unlikeliest of places. If you're looking for some really cool shopping, avoid the malls and avoid the cars. The traffic's terrible. Head out to the embassy area on Sun Lichuan Road. Take a bike, but don't go too fast because you might miss it. Now get off the bike, and here it is. It's called Phoenix, handmade porcelain. You know what? Not in the brochure, not in the guidebook, but it's in my book. You gotta stop. Porcelain originated in China thousands of years ago, and the intricate designs and beautiful glazing work can still be found in small shops like these. My translator, Mei Zhang, knows the city better than most.
Mr. Ray.
Nice to
Peter.
meet you.
Peter.
This is all her stuff.
This is all her stuff, her design.
Yeah.
And she actually does a lot of the molds herself. And so she's one of the artists who really sticks to the
Traditional.
hand-making tradition. Yeah, not machines.
No factory.
No factory.
Not a single factory involved.
没有工厂. Nope.
Nope, I got the no part.
And I feel sometimes when you go to stores in China, everything's like factory made and then things are cheap. That's what Made in China sort of stands for. It's so rare to find a jewel, an artisan who loves doing what she does.
And you can see that passion and craftsmanship on display in every piece of porcelain.
She loves this sort of subtle green color because the style of this actually has lasted since Tang Dynasty, which is, what, 1,200 years ago? And she basically did her own design, adopting traditional technique, and make it still functional in modern days.
So what we really have here is traditional and original.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
very much so.
Just like this porcelain shop, there are surprises around nearly every corner in Beijing, especially when it comes to the food. Take this Vietnamese restaurant called Susu. Wait a minute, Vietnamese food in China? Of course, it's like finding great Italian food in the middle of Lucerne. But the challenge with Susu is, first, you have to get here. Don't look for signs, and there are no street numbers. If you want to find this place, you count your steps. When you get 300 meters, you turn right, and you go through these doors. And then, you're in for a real surprise. You're hard to find.
For us, I think that is the thing. We want to create some experience. And later on, we said, oh, should we get a sign or should we give the very detailed map? And I think that, people love to make an adventure, right?
And don't be fooled by the size of the place.
This is one tiny kitchen, isn't it?
Very tiny. We have to squeeze everything in so it's very tight.
And squeeze it in, they do. Susu serves about 200 customers a day, and they keep coming back for more.
And what makes this food, what makes it so special?
I think our chefs are artists. They can just, work out such beautiful dishes, with a tiny little space. This is the classic pancake.
And what's
we
in
call
this?
The basil.
It's called the what now?
The shrimp and pork. Now, this is the beans, the yellow beans, and this is the flour made of this beans.
So it's Vietnamese, but also quite French.
I think they borrowed some, like a concept.
They did?
Yeah. They mix.
No, they didn't borrow it, they stole it.
They shouldn't say that, it's including.
Well, whoever came up with the idea, it sure tastes good. Not surprisingly, most first-time tourists to Beijing go to the Great Wall. Parts of this ancient fortification run through the mountains just north of the city, and it's definitely a sight to behold. But once you're there, stick around. You'll be in for a treat.
Most people go to the Great Wall and then go back to their hotel in Beijing. I've got a better idea. End your day at the base of the Great Wall in the village of Bego, at a place called the Brickyard Retreat, a 25-room special place that most people don't even know about.
Jim Spear owns the Brickyard with his wife. He's an American expat, but he's no newcomer to China.
I've lived here for 29 years, and I first came here as a student at Beijing University in 1981. I've seen a lot of changes over the years, and for the most part, I think the change would count as progress.
And it turns out, Jim has actually been a part of that progress. He opened the Brickyard several years ago, after he and his wife stumbled on an old factory building outside Beijing.
Which was a smoke-belching glazed tile factory, full of heaps and mess. And I turned around and there was this incredibly stunning view of the Great Wall. And then I started to think and imagine what an opportunity to take something which had been polluting and ruining the environment out here in the countryside and turn it into something that could hire local people, where we could build a garden and grow some of our own food, and then have people from China and from overseas come in and be able to enjoy the scenery here.
Visitors to the Brickyard also get a real taste and feel of the Chinese countryside.
You cannot help but be immersed. Just next door are where local Chinese villagers live. Beijing and Shanghai, so advanced, so modern. That's the real China. But at the same time, there's something like 600,000 villages in the country. And that's part of the real China too.
But don't worry, here the beds are comfy, and they serve up a mean cup of tea.
I've gotten wonderful feedback from people. They would never expect to find a little hotel like this in the countryside in China.
Like so much of Beijing, the key to these hidden gems is finding them in the first place. That's also part of the charm.